What if most of what you're chasing right now doesn't matter? I used to believe it did. That if I worked harder, earned more, built something solid, one day it would feel like enough. I was wrong. Not in a loud way, not in a way anyone could point at. In a quiet way, the kind that looks like success from the outside, but feels strangely empty when everything goes still. And you don't notice it right away. You notice it later, in the silence, in the moments that are supposed to feel complete, but don't. That's the part no one prepares you for, because by the time you see it clearly, you've already spent years chasing the wrong things, and time doesn't wait for you to figure it out. So before you get there, before things start to feel a little too quiet, there are a few things I wish I understood much earlier. I used to think success would fix everything. Not all at once, just enough. Enough to feel settled. Enough to feel like I had finally arrived somewhere. So I chased it, slowly at first, then harder, then without really thinking about anything else. More work, more money, more things that looked like progress. And eventually, I got some of it. Not everything, but enough to believe I was close. And that's when something strange happened. Nothing changed, not in the way I expected. The moment didn't feel different. There was no sense of this, is it? Just another day, just another quiet evening. That's the part no one tells you. You imagine a finish line, but when you get there, it feels exactly like where you started, just with more behind you. I remember sitting alone one night. Everything looked fine, better than fine actually, but something felt off. Not wrong, just missing. And I couldn't explain it, because on paper, it all made sense. That's when it starts to sink in. You weren't chasing the feeling, you were chasing the idea of the feeling. And those are not the same thing. This is where most people get stuck. They think they just need a little more money, a little more recognition, a little more proof. So they keep going, not because it works, but because stopping feels worse. And years pass like that, quietly, without anything breaking, without anything forcing you to stop, until one day, you realize something you don't want to admit. It was never going to be enough, not because you failed, but because it was never designed to fill what you were trying to fill. And that's a hard thing to sit with, because now the question changes. If success isn't enough, then what is? And that's where everything starts to shift. I thought I had time, not in a careless way, just quietly assumed it. There was always later, later to fix things, later to call, later to say what needed to be said. It never felt urgent, because nothing was breaking. Life was moving. Days were normal. Everything seemed fine. So I delayed things. Small things mostly. A visit I kept pushing back. A conversation I didn't feel ready for. A moment I thought I could recreate. Anytime. That's how it happens. Not through big mistakes. Through ordinary days. That's the part people misunderstand. Time doesn't leave all at once. It slips away in routines, in days that feel identical, in choices that don't feel important. You wake up. You do what you always do. You tell yourself there's still plenty ahead. And then something changes. Not loudly, quietly. A phone stops ringing. A place feels different. Someone isn't there anymore. And you realize that moment you thought you could return to is gone, not because you chose to lose it, but because you assumed it would wait. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because there's no clear line, no warning, no moment where someone tells you, this is the last time, the last conversation, the last visit, the last ordinary day you didn't pay attention to. It just passes. And only later do you see it for what it was. That's when regret starts to feel different. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just quiet. A thought that stays with you longer than it should. I had time, and I didn't use it. And the hardest part, you can't go back and fix something that disappeared slowly, because you never saw it leaving. That's when you understand something most people learn too late. Time doesn't run out suddenly. It fades, and by the time you notice it clearly, you're already standing on the other side of it. I thought people stayed, not because I said it out loud, but because it felt obvious. You see the same faces. You have the same conversations. You build a rhythm with someone, and you start to believe it's permanent. So you don't rush. You don't say everything you feel. You don't make every moment count, because you think there will be more time, more chances, more conversations later. But that's not how it works. People don't leave all at once. There's no clear ending, no final scene where everything stops. It happens slowly. They call a little less. You see them a little less. Messages get shorter. Life gets in the way. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself. And for a while, nothing feels wrong. Just different. A little quieter. A little more distance. But you don't question it, because it doesn't hurt enough yet. That's the part people miss. Loss doesn't always arrive as pain. Sometimes it arrives as silence. And silence is easy to ignore, until one day you try to reach back, and something feels unfamiliar. The conversation isn't the same. The connection isn't the same. Or worse, it's not there at all. And there's no moment you can point to and say, that's when it ended. Because it didn't end. It faded, slowly, quietly, without asking for your attention. This is where it stays with you, not as regret you can fix, but as something you replay. Small moments, things you could have said, time you could have given, attention you thought you could delay. And now, you see it clearly. People were never meant to stay the same. They change. They move. They disappear from your life in ways you don't notice until it's too late. And the hardest part, it didn't feel important when it was happening. But later, it becomes one of the only things that did. I spent a long time trying to prove something. I didn't always know what it was. Just a feeling that I had to become someone, that I had to show people I mattered. So I worked for it, quietly at first, then harder, then almost all the time. I compared myself to people ahead of me, to people my age, to people who seemed certain. And every time I felt like I was falling behind, I pushed a little more. That's how it builds, not from pressure outside, from something inside you that says, you're not enough yet. So you try to fix it. You achieve something. You reach a milestone. You get recognition. And for a moment, it feels like it worked. But it doesn't last, because the voice doesn't go away. It just moves the line. Now it wants more proof, more results, more reasons to feel like you belong. This is where most people get trapped. They don't realize they're chasing a version of themselves that never settles. And the strangest part, the audience you think is watching isn't really watching. People are busy. They're thinking about their own lives, their own problems, their own doubts. They're not keeping score the way you think they are. But you don't see that at the time. So you keep performing, keep adjusting, keep pushing, trying to meet a standard that keeps changing. Until one day, you feel tired, not physically, something deeper, like you've been carrying something that was never yours to carry. And you start to question it. All those years, all that effort, all that pressure you put on yourself, what was it for? And that's when it becomes clear. You weren't living, you were proving, and those are not the same thing. Because a life built on proving something never really feels like it belongs to you. And when that realization hits, it's quiet, but it changes everything. So, after all that, What is a good life? I used to think it had to look a certain way. Something visible. Something others could recognize. Something that meant you did it right. But that's not what it is. Not even close. A good life doesn't stand out. It doesn't impress people. Most of the time, it doesn't look like anything special at all. It's smaller than you expect. Quieter. Easier to miss. It's a slow morning where nothing is rushing you. A simple meal that you actually sit and enjoy. A conversation where you don't feel the need to be anywhere else. That's it. And when you hear that, it almost sounds disappointing, too simple, too ordinary. But that's exactly why most people miss it. They're looking for something bigger, something louder, something that proves it matters. But a good life doesn't prove anything. It just feels steady. There's no constant pressure, no need to keep chasing, no feeling that you're behind. Just enough. And that word changes over time. When you're young, enough feels far away. When you're older, you realize it was never that far. You just kept moving past it. That's the part that stays with you. Not the things you didn't achieve, but the moments that were already good and you didn't recognize them because you were busy looking for something better. And now, when you look back, those small moments are the only ones that feel real. It took me 85 years to understand that, not because it was complicated, but because I never stopped long enough to see it. I kept moving, kept chasing, kept thinking the answer was somewhere ahead, and it wasn't. It was always in the things I ignored, the quiet moments, the simple days, the people I thought I had more time with. By the time I understood that, most of it was already behind me. That's the part no one says out loud. You don't realize what matters until you've already spent years focused on what doesn't. And you can't undo that. You can't go back and relive it differently. You just see it clearly now. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it isn't. But if you're hearing this, you're not where I was. Not yet. You still have time to notice things before they disappear. Or maybe you already know all of this. You just haven't stopped long enough to admit it.